When emotions run high in court, even convicted killers aren't safe. What happens when grief and rage take over? In this video, we're diving into shocking moments when convicted killers were attacked in court. Stay tuned for these intense confrontations, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Courtrooms are often intense environments, especially during trials involving heinous crimes. In some cases, the raw emotions of the victims' families boil over, leading to shocking and dramatic moments in court. This video recounts 5 instances where defendants face the full wrath of those they wronged. The tragic case of Lindy Jones.
Indicated he wanted a trial. When he got the trial letter, he actually called my office very upset that they put him on the trial list.
In August 2019, 19-year-old Lindy Jones was charged with the murder of 18-year-old Willie Antoine Fields in South Carolina. Lindy, along with his younger brother Jalen, was arrested following the investigation. In court, the victim's mother, Angela Fields, expressed her grief, describing the pain of losing her only child. Her husband, Willie Clay Fields, initially tried to console her, but soon found himself overwhelmed by grief, leading to a tense confrontation with Lindy in the courtroom. Diamond Alvarez's family's confrontation.
Toward the defense of her relative, she's again blocked by De Leon's own mother. Shortly after, a woman in a red shirt runs toward Alvarez's mother.
The case of 16-year-old Diamond Alvarez, who was fatally shot 22 times by her ex-boyfriend, 19-year-old Frank DeLeon Jr., is another example of courtroom tensions reaching a boiling point. Diamond's mother, devastated by the loss of her daughter, confronted Frank during the trial. Frank's smirking demeanor only escalated the situation, leading to a physical altercation between the families. Despite the chaos, the police intervened, and Frank was eventually sentenced to 45 years in prison. Jason Wilson's anger toward Tristan Lamro.
Yes, you can take those mitts off. You're asking me permission to do something, Jason?
In Utah, 25-year-old Tristan Lamro faced charges for the first-degree murder of his wife, 19-year-old Misty Lamro, in August 2009. During the trial, Misty's brother Jason Wilson delivered a victim impact statement expressing his anger toward Tristan, who appeared indifferent to his crimes. Jason's frustration led to a near confrontation, but deputies managed to prevent any further escalation. Tristan was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. The heartbreaking story of Van Terry and Michael Madison. Michael Madison, a serial killer in Ohio, was convicted of murdering 3 women between 2012 and 2013. During his preliminary hearing, the father of one of the victims, Van Terry, addressed the court. Overcome with emotion, Van directed his anger at Michael, who dared to smirk in response. This disrespectful act led to Van lunging at Michael, but the police quickly restored order. Michael was ultimately sentenced to death for his crimes. The confrontation in the case of Peyton Gendron.
Forward, trying to reach the gunman seated at the defense table. Court officers jumping in to hurry.
In May 2022, 18-year-old Peyton Gendron, a white supremacist, opened fire in a predominantly black neighborhood's grocery store in New York, killing 10 people. During his trial, the victims' families expressed their grief and anger, with one family member almost attacking Peyton in court. The police intervened, and Peyton later apologized, acknowledging the gravity of his actions. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Larry Nassar, The Unforgivable Crime.
Committed suicide in 2016.
She stared Nassar down in court.
Larry Nassar, a former USA Gymnastics doctor, was convicted of sexually abusing hundreds of young athletes under the guise of medical treatment. The courtroom during his sentencing was a place of raw emotion, as many of his victims and their families had the opportunity to confront him directly. One particularly powerful moment came from a mother whose daughter took her own life after being abused by Nassar. She recounted how her daughter had confided in her about the abuse and the overwhelming pain that followed. This mother, along with many others, expressed their rage and sorrow in the courtroom. Nassar's eventual apology was met with skepticism and anger. The judge, emphasizing the gravity of his crimes, sentenced Nassar to 175 years in prison, ensuring he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. Quinn Bowes, A Father's Anguish.
If your kid's looking upon you, because being the head of the household,
Quinn Bowes was in court for the murder of his 11-month-old son, a crime that shocked everyone. During the sentencing, as Bowes was being led away, the child's uncle, Jeremiah Matthew Lay, could not contain his rage. He punched Bowes before being subdued by the police. This outburst, while understandable, led to Jeremiah being sentenced to 179 days in jail for his actions. The case highlighted the intense emotions that can surface when a family member is confronted with the person responsible for the death of a loved one. one. Despite his brief punishment, Jeremiah's actions were a clear indication of the depth of his grief and anger. Vashon Flowers, a son's uncontrollable grief. In another tragic case, Vashon Flowers was convicted of murdering his wife, Jamie Thomas Flowers, during a domestic dispute. The couple's daughter provided a heartbreaking account of the events leading up to the murder, recalling how her father had become irritable and violent over a disagreement about smoking. During the sentencing, the victim's son, London Thomas, was unable to control his emotions. He attempted to attack Flowers in court, leading to a chaotic scene that required intervention from the police. Flowers was ultimately sentenced to life in prison, but the incident underscored how the courtroom can become a stage for unfiltered, raw emotion when families are forced to confront the person who took away their loved one. James Douglas Gonzalez, A Brother's Rage.
Dad.
James Douglas Gonzalez, a 15-year-old, was in court for the killing of Edward Hall. Although the jury found him guilty of negligent homicide rather than murder, the victim's younger brother, Kevin Hall, was enraged by the verdict. In a fit of anger, Kevin attempted to attack Gonzalez in the courtroom, leading to a physical altercation that required police intervention. Kevin's actions were driven by the profound grief and anger he felt over the loss of his brother. The courtroom, meant to be a place of order, became a chaotic scene of emotional outbursts. Kevin was sentenced to 5 days in jail for his actions, but his behavior highlighted the intense emotions that can surface in the aftermath of a tragic loss. Dwayne Smith, a father's desperate outburst.
Later in the day, the mom was sentenced to 14 to 25 years for a child abuse conviction.
Dwayne Smith faced the heartbreaking task of delivering a victim impact statement during the sentencing of Clifford Thomas, the man convicted of killing his 3-year-old daughter, Jamela. The crime was especially horrific as Clifford and his girlfriend had brutally murdered the young child. The weight of this unimaginable loss became too much for Dwayne to bear as he stood in the courtroom. Overcome with grief and rage, Dwayne attempted to physically attack Clifford instead of delivering his prepared statement. The courtroom erupted into chaos as police officers quickly intervened to restore order. The intensity of Dwayne's emotions highlighted the profound pain and anger that consumed him, making it clear that no words could adequately convey the depth of his suffering. Ultimately, Clifford and his girlfriend were sentenced to up to 15 years in prison, but the memory of Dwayne's emotional outburst lingered with everyone present. It served as a stark reminder of the human cost of the crime, the devastation left in its wake, and the powerful, raw emotions that can surface in the pursuit of justice. Dwayne's actions in court left an indelible mark, capturing the profound impact that such a tragic loss can have on a grieving parent. Dale Williams, a family's unbearable loss.
Dale to not come home. It was a matter of...
In a particularly tragic case, Dale Williams was on trial for the murder of his ex-girlfriend, Elizabeth Pledger Stewart. The crime occurred after Dale ran Elizabeth off the road and fatally shot her in front of witnesses. During the trial, the victim's family was given the chance to speak, but the pain of their loss proved overwhelming. As the victim's daughter prepared to give her statement, her brothers could not contain their emotions. They attempted to attack Williams in the courtroom, leading to a chaotic scene that required police intervention. The court session had to be rescheduled, and the victim's aunt eventually gave her statement. Williams was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison, but the incident underscored the devastating impact of his actions on the victim's family. These cases illustrate the intense emotions that can erupt in courtrooms, particularly in trials involving horrific crimes. Whether it's the anger of a victim's family, the remorse of a defendant, or the frustration of a judge, these moments serve as powerful reminders of the human cost of violence and the deep scars it leaves behind. Thanks for watching. If you found this video gripping, hit subscribe and stay tuned for more intense courtroom moments.